The listing had only 3 photos. One of the cabin from a distance. One of the interior, just a table, a bed, and a fireplace. And one of the woods, taken at dusk. No reviews. That should have been the first warning. But Mark wasn't the kind of man who believed in warnings. He believed in quiet, in distance, in getting away from people, and this place promised exactly that. Perfect for hunting, the description said. Complete isolation. He booked it without thinking twice. The drive took longer than expected. The GPS lost signal about 20 minutes before he arrived, and after that, it was just a dirt road winding deeper and deeper into the forest. Trees grew thick, swallowing the sky, turning late afternoon into something closer to evening. By the time he saw the cabin, the sun was already slipping behind the horizon. It stood alone in a clearing. No neighboring houses, no lights, no sound except wind moving through branches. Mark stepped out of his truck, stretching his back. The air smelled damp, and strangely cold for the season. Yeah, he muttered, this'll do. The front door wasn't locked. It creaked open slowly, like it hadn't been used in a long time. Inside, everything matched the photos, but something felt off. Too clean, too still. The fireplace was already stocked with wood. A lantern sat on the table, and on that same table, there was a piece of paper, folded neatly. Mark frowned. That's new, he said under his breath. He stepped closer, boots echoing softly on the wooden floor, and picked it up. The paper felt old, not just used, old. Yellowed edges, slightly brittle. He unfolded it. At the top, written in uneven handwriting, if you want to survive the night, follow these rules. Mark exhaled sharply. Very funny. He almost laughed. Some kind of joke from the owner, maybe. A gimmick to make the place feel creepy. Still, he read on. 1. Do not go outside after sunset. No matter what you hear. 2. If you hear knocking, ignore it. There is no one out there. 3. Keep the fireplace lit at all times. If it goes out, relight it immediately. 4. At exactly 2:13 a.m., something will try to enter. Do not open the door. 5. If you see movement between the trees, do not look directly at it. Mark smirked. Yeah. Okay. He folded the paper again and tossed it back onto the table. Horror Airbnb experience, he muttered. Nice touch. Outside, the last light of day disappeared. And just for a second, he thought he saw something move between the trees. Mark didn't scare easily. He'd hunted in worse places than this. Deeper woods, colder nights, places where the silence felt just as heavy. So whatever this rules list was supposed to do, it wasn't working. Still, he locked the door. Just in case, he said to no one. The cabin had no electricity. Only the lantern. Only the fire. That part wasn't in the listing. Mark crouched in front of the fireplace and struck a match. The flame caught quickly, spreading across the dry wood with a soft crackle. Light filled the room. Warm, flickering. Better. He set his rifle near the door, within reach. Old habit. Time passed slowly. Too slowly. The kind of slow where every sound starts to matter. Wind brushing against the walls. Wood creaking under shifting temperature. Something scratching, faintly, somewhere outside. Mark froze. Listened. Silence. Animals, he said quietly. Just animals. Still, he glanced at the paper again. Do not go outside after sunset. No matter what you hear. He shook his head. This is exactly how people freak themselves out. To prove it, to prove he was in control, he walked toward the door. Hand on the handle. Paused. The cold from the metal seeped into his skin. Outside, the darkness felt thick. Not normal night darkness. Something heavier. Like it was waiting. He pulled his hand away. Not worth it, he muttered. Minutes later, there it was again. Scratching. Closer this time. Right outside the door. Slow. Deliberate. Mark grabbed his rifle. All right, he whispered. Enough. He stepped toward the door again, heart steady but alert. The scratching stopped. Silence returned. Then, a soft sound. Not scratching, not movement. A voice. Help me. Mark froze. It was faint, barely audible, but it was there, right outside. Please. I'm lost. His grip tightened on the rifle. That's not funny, he called out. No response. Then again. It's cold. Mark's eyes shifted slowly to the table. To the paper. If you hear knocking, ignore it. There is no one out there. A knock echoed through the cabin. 3 slow taps. Knock, knock, knock. Mark didn't move. The voice came again. Closer. Right behind the door now. Mark. Let me in. His blood ran cold. He never told anyone he'd be here. The silence after the voice was worse than the voice itself. Mark stood frozen, rifle raised, eyes locked on the door. His name. It said his name. Mark. This time, softer, right against the wood, like lips pressed to the other side. He swallowed hard. Who's there? He demanded. No answer. Just breathing. Slow. Wet. The paper. He needed to read it again. Slowly, without taking his eyes off the door, he reached back and grabbed it. His hands were steady, but his chest wasn't. 2. If you hear knocking, ignore it. There is no one out there. There is no one out there. He whispered it to himself. Like repeating it would make it true. Knock. Not 3 this time. Just 1. Louder. The door handle moved. Slightly. A slow, careful turn. Mark raised the rifle. Stop. The handle froze. Then, a faint chuckle. Not human. Too stretched. Too wrong. You read the rules. Mark's finger tightened on the trigger. How do you know my name? He shouted. Silence. Then, scratching again. But not on the door. Around it. Along the walls. Across the windows. Like something circling. Looking for another way in. Mark backed away slowly. Toward the fireplace. The flames flickered violently for a moment. Almost like they were reacting. Keep the fireplace lit at all times. He glanced at it. The fire had gotten weaker. He hadn't noticed. Behind him, a loud bang against the wall. Then another. Then another. Something hitting the cabin from outside. Hard. Let me in. Now multiple voices. Whispering. Layered. Mark grabbed more wood and threw it into the fire, lighting another match. The flames surged. Bright. Strong. Instantly. Everything stopped. Silence. Complete. Heavy. Mark stood there, breathing hard. Listening. Waiting. Nothing. Slowly. Carefully. He turned his head toward the window. And for just a fraction of a second, he saw it, between the trees. Tall. Unnaturally tall. Standing perfectly still. Watching him. And then, it moved. Not away. Closer. Mark didn't blink. He couldn't. If he blinked, he was sure it would be closer. The thing between the trees stood just at the edge of visibility, where darkness swallowed detail. Its shape bent slightly, like it wasn't built for standing upright but forced itself to anyway. Too tall, too still, too aware. He forced himself to look away. The rule: if you see movement between the trees, do not look directly at it. Right, he whispered. His eyes dropped to the floor. The wooden planks suddenly felt safer to look at than anything else in the world. Minutes passed, or seconds. Time felt stretched. Wrong. Then, a soft thud. From outside. Closer than before. Mark's head twitched instinctively toward the sound. But he stopped himself. Don't look, he muttered. Don't look. Another thud. Then another. Heavy steps. Circling the cabin. Slow. Measured. Like something mapping the walls. The floor creaked behind him. Mark spun around. Nothing. The cabin was empty. Fire crackling. Lantern flickering. Same as before. But something had changed. The air felt tighter. Harder to breathe. Mark. The voice again. But not from the door this time. From everywhere. From the walls. From the ceiling. From inside the cabin. His stomach dropped. No. He whispered. No. No. There is no one out there. but it never said anything about inside. The thought hit him like ice water. He backed toward the center of the room, turning slowly, rifle raised. "Show yourself," he said, voice low, controlled. Silence. Then, a shadow shifted near the far wall. Not from the fire, not from the lantern, moving, on its own. Mark lifted the rifle. The shadow snapped back into place. Still, normal. His breathing quickened. "This is just stress," he told himself. "Isolation. That's all." The lantern flickered. Hard. Almost went out. Mark's head snapped toward it. "Hey." He stepped forward, adjusting it quickly. The light stabilized. But for a split second, the entire cabin went dark. And in that single moment of darkness, he heard something move, fast, right behind him. Mark turned instantly, swinging the rifle behind him. Nothing. The cabin stood exactly as before. Fire burning, lantern steady, empty. But his body knew. Something had been there, close enough to touch. "No," he whispered. "I would have seen it." The paper. He needed to read the rules again. Maybe he missed something. Maybe. He grabbed it off the table, unfolding it quickly. His eyes scanned the list. "Do not go outside after sunset. If you hear knocking, ignore it. Keep the fireplace lit at all times. At exactly 2:13 a.m., something will try to enter. If you see movement between the trees, do not look directly at it." Same as before. Nothing new. Mark exhaled slowly. "Okay, good." But something felt off. He frowned, looked closer. There was more writing. At the bottom. Faint, like it hadn't been there before. His chest tightened. 6. If you feel like you are not alone inside the cabin, do not turn around. It is already too late. Mark froze. Very slowly, he became aware of something. Breathing, not his, right behind him. Warm, close. His grip on the paper trembled. "No," he whispered. The breath came again. Long, slow. His instincts screamed at him to turn. To fight. To look. But the rule, "Do not turn around." "You added this," Mark said quietly. "You're messing with me." No response. Just breathing. Closer. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. Sweat ran down his back. "Get out," he said. Nothing. "Get out." The breathing stopped. Instantly. Silence filled the cabin. Mark stood there for a long time. Too long. Then, slowly, carefully, he turned. Nothing. But on the floor behind him, there were footprints. Wet, dark, leading from the wall to where he had been standing. Mark didn't sleep. He didn't even sit down. He stayed in the center of the cabin, back near the fire, eyes constantly moving. Watching everything, trusting nothing. The clock on his phone still worked. Barely. No signal. But the time ticked forward. 1:47 a.m. The rule echoed in his head. At exactly 2:13 a.m., something will try to enter. He checked the door. Locked. Checked the windows. Closed. 1:59 a.m. The forest outside had gone completely silent. No wind. No insects. Nothing. 2:07 a.m. Mark's throat felt dry. His body tense. Every second stretched longer than the last. 2:12 a.m. "All right," he whispered. "Let's see what you've got." 2:13 a.m. The knocking started instantly. Violent. Explosive. Not polite. Not slow. The door shook under the impact. Wood cracking. Hinges groaning. Mark grabbed the rifle, aiming straight at it. "Not coming in," he shouted. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, a voice. Calm. Almost amused. "You're learning." The handle turned. Hard. Forcing against the lock. The door bent inward slightly. Wood splintering. Mark's finger hovered over the trigger. "Try it," he whispered. The pressure stopped. Silence again. Then, a new sound. From the window. Slow tapping. Mark's head turned. Outside. Something stood right against the glass. Too close to see clearly. Just a shape. Tall. Crooked. Its head tilted slightly. Then, it smiled. And the fire behind Mark flickered. Hard, almost going out. The flames dipped. Not naturally. Not like wood burning out. Like something was pulling the light away. Mark reacted instantly. No, 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 no. He dropped to his knees, grabbing more wood, shoving it into the fireplace. His hands shook as he struck a match. It took 3 tries. Too long. Behind him, a soft laugh. He froze mid-motion. You need that, the voice whispered. The match finally caught. He threw it in. The fire surged back to life. Bright, violent. The whisper stopped. Mark stayed there, breathing hard, staring into the flames like they were the only real thing left in the world. Rule 3, he muttered. Fire stays on. A crack echoed from somewhere inside the cabin. Not outside. Inside. He turned slowly. The wall near the door had changed. It wasn't broken. It wasn't open. But the shadows along it were deeper. Too deep. Like something was standing there. Pressed flat against the surface. Watching. Mark grabbed the lantern and held it toward the wall. The shadows snapped back. Normal again. You can't light everything, the voice whispered. Mark backed toward the fire again. Stay in the light, he said. That's it. That's the trick. But even as he said it, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The fire wasn't warming the room anymore. Mark checked his phone again. 2:13 a.m. Still. No. He whispered. He waited, watched, counted in his head. Nothing changed. 2:13 a.m. The same second. Frozen. The knocking started again. Not at the door this time. Under the floor. A dull, heavy pounding. Like something buried beneath the cabin was trying to get out. Mark stumbled back. That's not part of it, he said. That's not part of the rules. The floorboards trembled slightly, dust falling between the cracks. You stayed too long, the voice said. Mark shook his head. No, time moves. Time always moves. But it didn't. 2:13 a.m. The same minute. Over and over. The pounding grew louder, closer. A crack split one of the floorboards. Just slightly. Mark stared at it, frozen. Something moved beneath it. A finger, long, pale, bent the wrong way. It pushed slowly through the gap. Reaching, feeling. Mark staggered back, nearly dropping the rifle. No. The finger twitched. Then another appeared beside it. Then another, clawing their way upward. Let us in. Multiple voices whispered. Mark looked wildly around the cabin. The door, the windows, the walls, none of them mattered anymore. It wasn't trying to get in. It was already under him. Mark backed into the table, knocking the paper to the ground. His eyes snapped to it. Something had changed again. New writing. Darker this time. Clear. Fresh. He grabbed it with shaking hands. 7. If time stops at 2:13 a.m., you must not let anything touch you. If it does, you will remain. Remain, he whispered. A cold hand brushed his ankle. Mark screamed and kicked violently, stumbling forward toward the fireplace. The fingers snapped back beneath the floor. But not all of them. One hand remained. It pulled itself out slowly. An arm followed. Too long, too thin, dragging itself across the wooden floor toward him. Mark raised the rifle, pulled the trigger. The shot exploded through the cabin. The thing didn't stop. It kept moving, dragging, crawling. You don't leave, it whispered. Mark scrambled back, grabbing a burning piece of wood from the fire and slamming it down onto the arm. The thing shrieked, a sound that didn't belong in any living throat. It recoiled instantly, pulled back into the floor. Silence. Mark stood there, shaking, holding the burning wood like a weapon. Fire, he whispered. Fire keeps it out. Behind him, the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed half the cabin. Mark turned sharply. No, he rushed to the lantern, fumbling to relight it. Hands shaking, breath uneven. Behind him, movement, fast. He lit the lantern. Light returned. Nothing. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The cabin looked bigger. The walls were farther apart. The ceiling higher. The corners too far away. That's not possible, he whispered. You're deeper now, the voice said. Mark turned slowly. Deeper into what? Silence. Then, knocking. From inside the walls. All around him. Every direction. Knock, knock, knock. Stop. The knocking stopped instantly. Then, every surface in the cabin knocked back at once. A deafening explosion of sound. Mark dropped to his knees, covering his ears. Make it stop. Silence. Heavy. Total. Then, a new voice. His voice. You shouldn't have come here. Mark froze. Slowly, he looked up. Across the room, something stood there, perfectly still. It looked exactly like him. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It just stood there, watching him. Mark slowly raised the rifle. What are you? He whispered. The other Mark smiled slightly. You stayed, it said. Same voice, same tone. No, Mark said. I'm leaving. No one leaves, it replied calmly. The fire flickered again, weaker now. Mark glanced at it, just for a second. When he looked back, the other him was closer. Too close. Mark fired. The shot hit it square in the chest. It didn't react. Didn't even flinch. That doesn't work here, it said. Mark stumbled back, panic breaking through completely now. The thing tilted its head. You broke Rule 6. Mark's blood went cold. If you feel like you are not alone inside the cabin, do not turn around. I didn't, he started. You did, it interrupted. Behind Mark, breathing again, close, warm. He hadn't noticed when it came back. Mark grabbed the paper again. Desperate now, searching. The rules were gone, all of them. The page was blank. No, he whispered. No, no, you don't need 'em anymore, the other him said. Mark backed toward the door. I'm leaving, he said again. He reached for the handle, unlocked it, pulled the door open. Outside, there was no forest, just darkness, endless. That's not outside, the voice said behind him. Mark slowly stepped back inside. The door slammed shut on its own. Locked. The other Mark stepped closer. Slow, calm. This place isn't for staying, it said. It's for replacing. Mark shook his head. No, someone always comes, it continued. Someone always ignores the rules. Mark's breathing became shallow. And someone always remains. The thing smiled wider now. Too wide. Guess which one you are. The fire was dying. Mark turned toward it, desperate. No, that's the last rule. He rushed forward, grabbing wood. But there was none left. The pile was gone. The fire shrank. You don't need it anymore, the voice whispered. The light faded. Slowly, darkness filled the cabin. Mark stood there, shaking. What happens when it goes out? He asked. Silence. Then, right behind him, you stay. Morning came. Sunlight broke through the trees. The cabin stood quietly in the clearing. Still, peaceful. A car pulled up. A man stepped out, stretching. Looking around. Perfect, he said. He walked to the door. Opened it. Inside, everything was clean. Still, normal. A fireplace. A table. A lantern. And a piece of paper. Folded neatly. The man picked it up. Unfolded it. At the top, written in uneven handwriting. If you want to survive the night, follow these rules. Behind him, something shifted in the shadows. Watching. Waiting.